Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Amy and today I wanted to do a video talking about how I revised for my A-levels. I studied psychology, politics and religious studies and I got an A star, an A star and an A. I studied my A-levels, I finished back in 2019. I am now in my second year at university and I found that some of these revision techniques that I used during A-levels and developed during A-levels helped me now and helped me achieve the grades that I wanted to achieve and get into the uni that I wanted to get into by using these methods. My first piece of advice is to take mock exams and practice exams seriously. They are the closest thing you'll get to an actual exam, and an actual exam you need the certain conditions. My school would always do mock exams in the same way as exams, so it was like we'd get the 2 weeks intensive mock exams, we'd get a reading week the week before, like a revision week, and we would have to do these exams in the exam hall where we actually sat our actual A-levels. When you're doing practice papers in the run-up to your exams, they come nowhere near. You can't recreate the environment as well as mock exams do. So if you take the mock exams seriously, if you use them as an actual way to like fully revise and fully make sure that you get to a place that you feel confident to take them like you would in May, June, then it'll help with your feedback, it'll help make sure that you get the best resources possible to help revise from for your actual exams. The next one I could make a whole video on, and that is to create a revision timetable. I'd say don't be unrealistic with these. I used to, when I started doing revision timetables, I would block myself in for like 8-9 hours of work and I'd get up at 6 AM and I'd go to sleep at 10 PM, and it's unrealistic. You need to put in your breaks, you need to make sure that you are properly giving yourself time to take care of yourself and to avoid burnout. Moving quite similarly on from that, try not to compare yourself to other people around you, what your teachers are expecting, what study tubers are doing, because it might not be realistic. You don't necessarily need to assume that hours equal productivity. I would never do I would barely ever do a 7-hour day. That was like my maximum, and that's when I was like feeling dead productive. I needed to make sure that I was working smartly, not just for a really long time. The next one is like my main piece of advice, and I think it's what helped me get the grades that I got. It's to create revision resources as you go along. So I don't have them with me because I donated them back to my school, but I had these little revision guides where I had just typed up, not all my notes, I'd kind of tried to summarise as I went along, and it meant that I could look back in this one folder where I had all my revision, so I didn't have to look at my actual folders that had all my work in because it was already summarised in a nice folder. And basically I'd look at the spec, and for every subject you do, you will have a specification. And it'll be on your exam board's website. If you can click on the exam board and look at your specification, you can kind of find headings, and I'd do PowerPoint headings based on those little bits of the spec, and it meant that I could target what I needed to know. And it meant that if I was like, okay, today I'm going to study pressure groups, I could find that in my folder, take those pages out, and I only needed like 2 or 3 slides worth. I didn't need like a whole section in my folder. So essay plans, especially for like RE and politics, were my best friend. I used to have little templates where I would make, and you obviously would have to do this for your exam board. My RE ones and my politics ones were very different, but if you would like me to provide them, let me know and I can make them up again. Introduction, conclusion. And I used to do these really detailed, so then I could take the really detailed essay plan and try and memorize it, not like word for word, but like try and remember the points to then further take that essay plan and do it again but more summarized, and keep summarizing until you've got like a little word bank in your head. The next one is to use free and cheap online resources to try and help you be more productive, and that's one of the things that I used to struggle with more in year 12 in terms of productivity. I didn't have that kind of drive at first. It wasn't until year 13 that I properly dedicated my year to getting the grades that I wanted. And I found that Forest, which I think is £1 on the App Store, I'll leave a link to it down below, I use now. I think I used it yesterday. Let's see. This is Forest. I used it in my study with me a few weeks ago, I believe, and you just kind of alter the time. You're not allowed to go on your phone during that time or it kills the tree, basically. So it works quite well at keeping you off your phone. Similar ones for like your laptop. I have self-control, which I'll also see if I can link down below, which means that you can block certain websites for a certain amount of time. So what I used to do was I would block Netflix, YouTube and Twitter until about 5-6 o'clock, and then make sure that I could go on YouTube on my iPad if I needed to. But by blocking it like that, it meant that I couldn't go on the apps until the time ran out. It was annoying, but it works. Other apps that I would recommend, Chrome extension and kind of app for your laptop, is Flux. I use this. It's not directly linked to studying, but it helps keep your brain kind of and your eyes healthy. It readjusts the brightness and warmness of your screen to make sure that you're not being like constantly blue lighted, and it's really good. I recommend Flux a lot. And another one is like the Pomodoro timers that you can find online, and I'll link one down below. And this is again for anyone who's doing an essay subject, and that is to write as many essays as possible. Now, as you get closer to your exams, you don't want to be writing essays, because the closer you get, the more you just want to make sure that you know the facts. It's more kind of towards during year 13 and year 12 if you can. I would recommend trying to just get your essay technique down. I had a really helpful, my teachers, especially for politics, shout out, during A-levels, I would hand in like 4 essays a week to each of them, and they would mark them and I'd get them back within like a couple of days. And it got to a point where I was handing in these essays and every time I was getting 30 out of 30, and it's because I'd memorised exactly the right structure because I practiced it so many times. And then I just kept all my essays in the back of my revision folder, and I would rewrite essays after a mock exam, and I would re-edit them and change them to try and fit what the mark scheme wanted, and look at the mark schemes, stuff like that. I see one of the big critiques of revision is cue cards, and not to do cue cards if you're not going to read them or use them, and I agree. Don't if you're not going to use them. I used to have Quizlet where I'd make question cards for mostly psychology, I think I did it for, and I'd just get my mum to test me. You can print them out and make them into physical cards, or you can just do them online, and I'd just go through memorizing methods, things, and I knew most of them, but it meant that it regurgitates the ones that you get wrong, and you have to get them right to like move on, and it works really well. I also did use physical cue cards. I had on my wall here, so this didn't used to be my bedroom, this used to be a spare room that we had, and I used it as my little office during A-levels, and I used to have all of my core studies for psychology all along the wall, and it just meant that if I was in the middle of an essay or something, I could just look up and look at the study. I just had it on a little card, and obviously on a little card you have to summarise as much as you can, so I would do that. That worked for me, but if you're not going to look at them, it's not worth using them. There's a few different ways to use cue cards, and I know like I said, for my methods exam for psychology, I would get my mum and my brother to test me, just go through the cards, just go through them so many times, and I knew all the answers by the end of it. I'd been tested so many times, and I used to find it a bit scary being tested because it was like, well, what if I get them wrong? But when you're doing it with like your mum, and you have all these cards that you've tried to like, you've written them out, you've written these questions out, so that'll help try and get it in your head at first. Start by testing yourself, just turn it that way and say, what is the 8 different types of observation? Say it, then turn it, look at them. Another method that I saw, I think it was Jack Edwards recommended in one of his videos, he said the stair methods, where you kind of put one on the stairs and you can't get up, you have to answer the question before you go up to the next step, and you kind of incorporate it into your daily life. So like put one on the fridge, put one on the cereal cupboard, stuff like that, so you can't do your daily things until you've answered a question. The next one is more of a mental health thing, and This is to set personal boundaries. My A levels were possibly some of the lowest mental health times I had. I was revising a lot, not like an unhealthy amount, I was just doing more revision than I needed to. I was not really socialising much, and so it's important to set yourself personal boundaries. I started to do that more towards the end of year 13. I would do a thing called a cutout, and this isn't for everyone, but it really helped me. I used to struggle with stopping and making sure that I was taking care of myself, so I would set a personal cutout time. I'd have an alarm that went off at about 8 o'clock, means I would stop work. I'd usually stop work about 6ish, because I would have been going from like 7 till about 6. With school and stuff, I'd be revising in like my private study periods and stuff like that. So when it got to about 6 o'clock, I'd usually stop, have my tea, watch some TV, and then by 8 o'clock I'd have an alarm go off, and it'd mean no electronics. It would be, I'd have a shower, I'd like shave my legs and condition my hair, and I'd tidy my bedroom. I used to vacuum every day in my bedroom, just because I had my own vac. It'd just make me feel very put together. I would light a candle, read a book, listen to an audiobook. I've been doing that a lot at the moment to try and get myself back in the mindset for exam season, and just kind of make sure that you are setting the boundaries for yourself. Maybe you say, when I get to a certain time I stop, like I did. I stopped at 6 o'clock, maximum 8 o'clock. Or you say, when I get to a certain hour limit I'd stop, so like when I get to 4 hours then I'd stop. Stuff like that, to make sure that you're keeping your mental health in check, make sure you're not going to get burnt out, and you are taking care of yourself in terms of like food, hygiene, and just generally taking care of your brain. I now have a Switch, and during first year, when I bought this in the start of lockdown, during exam season I'd have my off time by playing Animal Crossing. Yes, it's a screen, but it'd help. And it just means you get kind of better quality sleep. It means that you're ready for the next day. I recommend. The next one's kind of in terms of like if you're struggling, and I mean this in terms of struggling academically, but it works if you're struggling with your mental health as well. Use your teachers. That's kind of what they're there for. I know different teachers and different schools have different methods. My teachers were very hands-on, they were very helpful. You could go to them whenever and ask them questions, and they'd take the time out to explain it to you. They'd mark essays, they'd mark practice papers. I know not everyone has that resource, and I was very lucky to have teachers who would dedicate their time to help me get the grades that I wanted. But if you can't go to a teacher in that kind of sense, your friends will help. There'll be some things that they understand that you don't understand, or vice versa. Online forums, the student room, look at YouTube videos, mark schemes, past papers, just to see how questions are phrased might help you. Sometimes you just need a topic to click in your brain, and towards the end of A levels there was some topics that did not click in my brain. I never had that. I had, in RE, there was one topic that we all hated, and I was, I think, sick on the day we learnt it, and it was the Trikaya Doctrine for Buddhism, and then it came up on my exam and I didn't know a thing about it, and I still got an A. Towards the end of A levels, when it got to like Easter, I didn't revise in Easter. I maybe revised 1 out of the 8 days that we had off. Me and my mum decided to re-wallpaper my whole house, as you do. So I didn't revise. I got to a point where it was like, I'm not going to be able to cram anything else in my brain, and I don't want to push something else out just for the sake of one topic that probably won't come up. And it did. But it was fine, because my other essays brought me up, my other exams brought me up. I kind of said this before, but you need to try and keep folders organised. I would recommend just like cheap A4 lever arch files, just cheap dividers. They don't need to be expensive. Look at the spec online and organise according to that. You don't have to like know the numbers and everything, but just kind of look at the topics and be like, okay, separate into like, for RE it was like separate into the teleological argument, cosmological argument, ontological argument. They were all one topic, but it meant that I could kind of go in a bit more detail with them. But when it came to my revision notes, I put them as one topic. Similar to this, when you are looking at your specification, colour code it. One thing that my politics teachers introduced quite near to our exams was they gave us the specification and were like, we want you to colour code it red for like, I do not understand this, yellow for and green for I'm good if this came up on the exam. And it helps kind of identify your weaknesses. Don't waste time on things that you know. They're not children. You don't have to spend equal time on all of your modules. If you know that you know something, don't waste your time on it. Maybe spend an hour leading up to your exams just flipping over your green notes, just being like, make sure that you do know it. But don't spend hours and hours trying to make sure that every little piece of knowledge in your head, if you understand it, you'll be able to write it in the exam. The main way to do this is to simplify and simplify again. If you've found a method that works for you, use that and apply it to everything. I remember in politics once there was a topic we did the 2017 general election, and we were meant to do a homework in a certain way and I did it in a different way, and my teacher was like, if that helps you, do it that way. And it meant that when I got to do my revision notes, I knew that this way of PowerPoint presentations with just the notes in a basic form worked for me. I found if I do it electronically, it works a lot better than handwritten, because I can do Control F and find topics and find keywords that I need to know, and it means that you can kind of tailor your education to something that you'll learn from, because you're going to need to take what you know, take out what you don't know, and then try and learn what you don't know. Once you've taken out the stuff you do know, that's less work here, and then you're going to learn it, and then you're going to take out what you know, try and learn what you don't know, and in the end you're going to know most of it. You're not going to know everything, obviously, but you're going to know enough to make points, write an essay. As I said, for politics, my teachers were very helpful, and one of the things you need to do in politics is keep up-to-date examples and use them in your essays. So try and use as much like 2019, 2018 as they can, was when mine was being taken. They were like, try and use as many sources from that time as you can. And the way that my teachers helped us with that is they set up a politics account, a Twitter account, where they would tweet different examples and what topics they link to and how you can use them. And I would frequently, I think like once a week, I'd go through the Twitter account and go through my revision notes and see if there's anything I could add to my notes to make them more up to date. I just have this one Twitter account where I follow loads of American politicians and loads of UK politicians, and occasionally I just check it to see what's going on and see people's different opinions. It's very helpful. The next piece of advice I'd offer is you need to regularly reflect on your strengths and weaknesses. I would go through my exams, my past exams, look at the different questions I got wrong, link them to a topic and say, okay, this topic is an area of weakness. I was quite quick in exams. I write really fast, so I would usually have like 30 minutes spare, 30 to 15 minutes. I would never finish it like to the dot. And so I'd just turn over the page and be like, here's what I struggled with during a mock. Obviously not my actual exams, but be like, here's what I need to work on. You can look at your strengths and weaknesses through essay feedback, teacher feedback, mark schemes, past papers, your mock exams, and just generally, if you were to sit down in front of me right now and I said this topic, would you be able to explain it to me? Probably not. Then you know it's something you need to work on. Something that I think it was Jack Edwards in one of his videos recommended was that planning is not wasting time, and he indicated in both planning your revision and planning in an exam, neither are wasting time. In an exam, they don't know you. I used to always do a little plan at the beginning, one to help me and make sure that I kept on track, and make sure that like your introduction links to the rest of your essay, because you've planned the rest of your essay. And if they see that you've done a plan and they're like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about, I'll keep that in mind for when they carry on reading your essay. If you just dive in head first into an essay, you're not going to know what you're going to conclude, you're not going to know what your what your stronger argument is. In politics especially, you need to be able to critique one of your points to better up your other point. And if you don't know where you're ending up, then how are they gonna know? How are you gonna finish an essay if you don't know what side you're on? Again, as well, planning your revision, I would take the specification, I would split my days that I had left up to my exams or my mock exams, and I would allocate those topics to those days, and it'd mean that on that day I would revise that thing. I'd usually write how I'd revise it, so I knew when I got to that day I knew exactly what I was going to do. Bear in mind that revision doesn't work for everyone. All the revision techniques that I'm giving now might not be the ones that work for you. And so you need to take time out to specifically trial different methods. It might be you spend a week where one day you do the Pomodoro method, the next day you do block working where you do 3 hours at a time and then take an hour off. I used to do maybe an hour 45 and then half an hour off, is what I used to do a lot. I'd watch like a little TV show, like a little sitcom. I'd watch Friends or How I Met Your Mother or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, just something easy that didn't like derail my whole day but also kept me just my mind off the work for a bit. One of the biggest like myths that I've seen is like highlighting doesn't work, highlighting isn't revision, and it isn't if you just do highlighting, but highlighting is revision. This is a reading on the 2019 general election. 2017 general election. I should know that because I've read it. I've gone through and highlighted as I've read, and then when I'm coming to summarise the reading I can be like, okay, so that was an important point, so I'll note that down instead of noting down the whole reading. Highlighting can be helpful as long as you do something afterwards. It helps to know that you haven't skim read, it shows that you've actually read what you're on about, and that's what I used to do with my notes. I'd type up my whole notes, I'd go through, I'd highlight what was important, and then I'd summarise them and take the highlighting and put it in a new document, and it meant that just you know that you've got the important bits and anything that you remember on that is extra. It's not necessary though. One thing I used to do, and I can't thank my family enough for having to listen to, is I used to just speak out essays. I'd be like, Mum, can you just sit there for 5 minutes while I just talk through an essay on why the Electoral College doesn't work? And she'd be like, yeah, and she wouldn't know what I'm on about, but I'd just talk at her and know that, oh, I didn't know what to say here. I didn't know which was the stronger argument. I'd write that down, I'd go back upstairs, I'd edit it, I'd reread it, I'd sometimes record myself reading an essay. I do that now. When I'm proofreading an essay to make sure that it makes sense, I will read it aloud and record myself, and then I won't listen back to it. It's just as you're speaking, it feels like you got a bit of purpose if you're talking to a camera, and as I go along I'd change things. I'd be like, oh, this doesn't really make sense, and it means that I can come back to it. Oh, I thought I had a photo of my old wall. So like I said, this used to be my little office. I marched to finishing my A-levels in July. I used to, as I said, have all my revision on my wall, and one of the things I did for politics, which might work for history or something like that where you need to have a bit of a timeline, is I had a timeline on my wall of loads of different pieces of legislation that I needed to know. So basically I'd go on PowerPoint, I'd split it into a table of like 6, and I'd type out the important dates and the year, the important like legislation and the year, or the event and the year. So and then I'd put it in order along my wall, and I had it colour coded so that the blue ones meant that it was for UK politics and the red ones meant that it was for US politics. And didn't mean to choose the Tory colours, but you know, it's fine. Both countries. Yeah, and it meant that I could look, say I was writing an essay and I was like, when was the Scottish independence referendum? Oh, 2014, cool. And I'd do that daily. And any time I came across something in my reading that I thought was important, write it down, put it on the wall. I'd have, oh, what year was Thomas Hobbes born? On my wall. What year did Jean-Jacques Rousseau die? On my wall. And I didn't need to know those things specifically, but it helped just kind of put into context what kind of time they were writing in, or when similar things were happening. So I'd have like UKIP call for Brexit vote, and then a couple of months later I'd have Brexit vote promised by David Cameron. And it just meant that I could go through. I had all the Supreme Court decisions in the US on the wall, and it helped put kind of things into context. And I'm really annoyed that I don't have a photo to show you of it because I was so proud of it. My next one is not really to do with revision, it's more again to do with like mental health, and it's mindfulness and taking care of your mental health. And I used to be someone that was a bit skeptical of mindfulness, and I never do it to the point of like the Buddha where you like sat under a tree for 40 something days. I just used to do a bit of mindfulness before I go to sleep, and it'd just be kind of, there was one that I watched once, and I just do that now like every night before I go to sleep, and it's you lay in your bed and you kind of focus on each little part of your body, so and the contact, and feel it, and then I wouldn't be able to move them. It was really odd. It's still really odd. It blows my mind. So you'd be like, you'd scan from the bottom of your body, you'd start with your toes, the sole of your foot, the heel of your foot, the ball, the top of your foot, make your way up to your calves, the front, the back, your shins, your knees, the back of your knees, and move your way up your body and just kind of feel all these different parts and think about them, and it kind of just helps relax your body a little bit. And then my school also, I think it's in year 12, set up a bit of a mindfulness, maybe it was in year 11, I don't know when it was. We used to do a mindfulness class, and this woman would come in and just kind of help us with mindfulness, and it'd be things like, imagine your happy place, which is obviously like the stupidest thing, like it's the most like cliche mindfulness thing, but it'd be like, think about where you feel like you can breathe, feel like you could go to sleep, and I'd be like, oh, I'm on top of a mountain. I don't like climbing, but I'd like to be at the top of the mountain. Then it'd be things like, think about the journey up, think about what you had to do before you got there, and it was just stuff that kind of helps distract your brain, and it's stuff that I kind of try and think about before I go to sleep, and it just helps you not stress. You're going to stress during your A-levels, and you need to accept that that's just something that's going to happen, and your school are going to go, a little bit of stress is normal, because you have to stress, it shows you care, and it's true, but it's really annoying to hear, and you just need to focus on making sure that that stress doesn't turn into burnout, and that stress doesn't turn into anxiety. Yeah. I avoided cramming throughout my whole A-levels. I don't think I crammed once. I did try my GCSEs. A-levels, no. I would stop, as I said, about 8 PM. I'd have a solid night routine. I'd do certain things before I went to bed. Get in the shower, wash my hair. I'd wash my hair every day just to keep the, which is obviously awful, and I don't do that now, but just to keep the routine. I would make my bed, I would clean my room, I'd vacuum my room, I'd clean all my surfaces in my room, I'd go clean the kitchen, I'd put moisturiser on, I'd do my skincare, just stuff like that. And I would keep a solid night routine and a solid morning routine before I started revision, and it just kind of separates your day up, makes sure that you have a start and an end, you have boundaries, as I mentioned earlier. The thing I've written on my notes for this one is just big paper, and it's true. During year 13, me and my friend would like steal, we wouldn't steal, we'd borrow paper from our teachers, and it'd be those big flip chart papers, so we could do giant mind maps. It used to be something that we'd do in our politics lessons. It's like, we'd do essay plans and we'd pass it around the room, and it's just something that's so fun to write on. And I know during one of my essays, I think it was in politics, I have this vivid memory of writing this essay and being a bit stuck, and then remembering this giant flip chart paper and being able to write the essay because I could picture the paper. And that sounds so silly, but it really worked for me. Same thing with colour coding. I had psychology was pink, politics was green, RE was blue, and everything had to be those colours. My RE, I had 3 folders, they were all some kind of blue. All my notes, all my revision timetables would all have consistent colours, just because it helps your brain remember what you're on about. One thing that's important is to practice your time management, and that's, as I said, I'd always have like half an hour left at the end of an essay, at the end of an exam, to like after I'd checked and everything, I'd just sit there for half an hour and just think about life. I really worked on my time management to make sure that I didn't run out of time in exams, and I don't think I ever did. I would write essays, I'd do practice essays in timed conditions. I'd go sit in, we had a little private study area, I'd go sit there after school when it was quiet. I'd put headphones in, I'd play Panic at the Disco, and I would write an essay for half an hour, 40 minutes, and hand in whatever I'd finished. And it got to a point where I just didn't need the full time. I would make sure that I was writing out essays, not typing up essays, because you're writing in an exam. I would try and recreate the environment as much as I can. I'd put my notes on the floor, I'd just have the table in front of me. I'd go sit in my politics teacher's room, or I'd go sit in the private studio, or I'd go sit in my nan's house, and just go sit somewhere else that was a different environment than my bedroom. And that moves on to my next point of separate work and play. Try and have a separate study room. Obviously not everyone has access to just like an office. I was very lucky that my sister moved out, so we had a spare room that I could sit and revise up here, which is not my bedroom because my old room has been turned into a lounge. Before that I would go, and still when I had this room, I'd occasionally go and sit in my nan's house when she wasn't there. Just try and separate kind of your bedroom from your study room, so you don't dread going into your bedroom every time you go. It means that you can, it's kind of like during the pandemic, people have really struggled like to keep the work-home balance separate because they're working from home. So they'd put the clothes on, they'd get ready, they'd go stand outside for 5 minutes, come back inside and sit at the desk. And I respect that. I used to get myself dressed to go up here and I'd get a cup of tea and a glass of water, and I'd just start, and then I wouldn't go back downstairs for a few hours. And it just really was something that I think made a really big difference, is having that separation. Separation I don't have now when I'm at home, but I do at uni, so I have to like cherish the times that I'm at uni because I don't have a desk here. I just have a bed. When you're planning your revision timetable, make sure to plan out your time off. Make sure to plan out your breaks. That includes meeting friends, spending time with family, spending time by yourself, doing things that you want to do. I would paint occasionally. I'm not a painter. I'm a digital artist, so I would do some drawing back in my early days. I would move my bedroom around. I do that a lot. Just, you know, just things to try and keep your mind off things. Don't spend all your time meeting up with friends, meeting up with family, whatever, but as long as you have a bit of time to keep yourself sane. I needed to keep myself sane, and the way I did that was meeting friends, meeting family, going for walks. And that's so, it annoys me so much when people say just go for a walk, but I used to go for like bike rides and I'd blast like Greatest Showman soundtrack in my headphones just to feel like I was the main character. This one's a bit sad, but it really worked, and that was to create your own essay plan podcasts. So I would say make sure you do have time to like listen to music, time to chill, have time off. But I used to walk to school and I'd leave at 7:30 in the morning, and then I'd get to school for 8 o'clock, and then I would do work until 8:30 when school started. So I would have this like half an hour walk, and I was just like, this is unproductive. So I'd record myself speaking out my essay plans to then listen to them when I walked to school, and it just kind of got me in the mood. And me, when I got to school, even though I only had half an hour to do something, it was like, I'm in the zone. I'm ready to start my day, and it really worked. And I don't know, it's something that it's like when people say put on something when you're going to sleep and you'll remember it. And I just would listen to these RE essay plan podcasts as I walked to school. It's a great method. Moving on from there, start with easy tasks in your day and then move on to the harder tasks. At the start of your day, you're not going to want to just write an essay out. You're not going to want to do an exam. You're just not. You need to ease yourself in. So do something like cue card testing. That's quite easy. Or just typing up notes. My favourite thing would be to type up my notes, just because that was very passive and it needed to be done. And you know, like when I'd summarise my notes and stuff, it was very passive. and even passive revision is not a waste of time. That was the most helpful thing that I could have done during my A-levels. But it was boring, but it'd get me in the mood, it'd get me ready to start revising, and then after that I'd usually be in the mood to do an essay on the thing that I've just written. So it was helpful. If you start to feel tired, if you feel exhausted, if you feel bored, if you feel unmotivated, then stop and have a reset. I would have this little reset where I'd shower, I'd sometimes wash my hair. Sometimes I'd wash my hair twice in one day. It was not good. Just to like set my brain up. Go get a cup of tea. Go for a walk. Stupid. I'd drink a Red Bull. What would I even do? I used to have this little routine where I'd reset, start again, put all my stuff away, clean my desk, start again, get it all out again, make sure that my desk wasn't cluttered. I would have a little inspiration wall. I'd have it here. I still have one here. This is a different one. It just kind of reset yourself. Give yourself time off, like half an hour. Sometimes give yourself a day off. I can't tell you how many days off I had because it was many. I knew that if I didn't have that day off that day, then I wouldn't be able to do the next day. You need to take care of yourself. You need to know your own limits, and don't think just you're procrastinating because you're taking a day off. You are procrastinating, yes, but you're being productive in that you're taking care of yourself. To-do lists. I love a good to-do list. You can do these online. You can do the post-it note method that Luke Cupford talks about. I'll link his video down below. You can do physical to-do lists. So I have on my phone, let me find it, the Microsoft To-Do app. I need to sign in because I got a new phone and I haven't, like, I got a new phone like 8 months ago and I haven't used it because I don't use that to-do list anymore. I have online to-do lists. I have a bullet journal. I've been bullet journaling since year 11. You need to try and have one centralised way to do a to-do list. I find a bullet journal is a very good way to do it. The to-do list app you can make, it's a Microsoft app, you can share it with other people. You can be like, hey mom, let's do a to-do list together. So if you were like revising with a friend, you'd be like, okay, today we need to do this, this, this and this. You've got it in there, it's on both of your apps. One of you ticks it off, it's gone. It's good. It's a great app. You just need to make sure that you're keeping up to date with things. I used to have a thing on my wall that had my 3 subjects and all of the topics, and I would tick off whether I'd done cue cards, revision list, whether I'd done my revision guide notes, tested myself, done an essay plan. And that was something that helped me keep up to date, helped me keep track of my folder, my revision folder, and it's just something that makes your brain feel less mushy, and I recommend. The next thing is very simplistic and it's just kind of a bit more helpful to your brain, and it's to print off a physical exam list. So print off a little thing that says each day of your exam, and then you can tick off when you've done an exam, and then you can throw away notes, or I donated my notes back to my school because I'd made all these revision guides. A revision technique that I don't know if I specifically used, I tried a lot of methods back in year 12 and 13. I would dedicate a day to a specific topic. I didn't love this method, but a lot of people do, so it might have been like, oh, today I'm going to just do psychology work, and that is something I would do. Or today I'm just going to focus on methods. I tended not to do that because it wasn't, my brain got quite bored quite quickly, but it works for some people. It worked for me to be like, okay, today is just a politics day, today is just a psychology day. That you can get in the mindset of kind of the essay that you need to write, the kind of methods that you need to be using, to not mix up different exam techniques and stuff like that. One thing that my teachers used to always say to us, and it was something that seemed silly at the time, but I completely agree with it now, is to avoid printed revision guides, like the ones that officially from the exam board. I bought the politics ones and the RE ones, and both of them it was like, they're not great. Mine are better. They, like politics, we got to choose which ideology we wanted to do, and we did nationalism, but I had all these notes for feminism and anarchism and ecologism that I wasn't studying, and it'd be like, look at the notes for this, and it'd be a different thing, and I didn't need to know that, and it just takes up space and it takes up time. when you read it. Just use the revision guides that you've made yourself. Just use your folder, because that's the best method that you're going to get out of it. Instead, I would recommend using YouTube videos, because they're made by students usually. So like if you use revision notes that are online, there's a few different websites that you can use where you can look at people's revision notes. If you use Quizlet, you can look at people's revision notes. If you watch YouTube videos, it's usually people who are students or teachers rather than like exam boards, and they're more helpful because they actually have sat it or have taught people how to sit it. Change up your revision methods throughout your day. I could not have spent a full day writing essays. I think I did probably 3 or 4 times, just like bang out 4 or 5 essays in one day, but that's draining. I'd love to just spend a day going through different things and kind of mixing it up, and it just means that your brain doesn't get too bored, and it means that you're being occupied by something. Use music if it works for you. I know my teachers used to say, don't listen to music, you need to be in silence, and it's like, music worked for me. It still works for me because I get very bored, and if I'm in silence I will get bored. I tended to listen to just one album on repeat and just listen to it constantly throughout my A-levels. During GCSEs it was Death of a Bachelor by Panic at the Disco. During A-levels it was Pray for the Wicked by Panic at the Disco, and alternating with After Laughter by Paramore. Currently it's the Hamilton soundtrack. You know, just find something that's either you've listened to it so many times it's monotonous to you, or something that's just kind of calming. I don't know how to explain what kind of music I use. Or you can just use like lo-fi beats. That works for some people. I like to listen to music I know, and sometimes I want to sing along, and sometimes that's fine. If I'm just typing up notes and I'm going to sing along, then that's fine. As long as I don't start writing about After Laughter, it's fine. But sometimes during essay writing I would tend to avoid kind of lyrics, but not always. It works for me. So don't beat yourself up if you don't stick to your timetable, if you're not as far ahead as you'd like to be, because you can't predict how your brain's going to be on every day. You can't predict how much time an essay takes or how much time an activity takes. That you need to bear in mind that when you're looking back at your revision. Beating yourself up for not sticking to a timetable, for not getting all the things done in a day, it wastes time. You could put that time to so much better use. You could do some cue cards instead of worrying about the fact that you've not finished something in your day. I watched a video by Rita B. Granger where she discussed the jelly bean method. I think it's got another name, where you like go through and you reward yourself, and it just doesn't work and it's not sustainable for a long period of time. I'll link her video down below because I can't remember the exact reasons. It doesn't work for me. Bad idea. Watch Study With Me. So I used to start my day with a cup of tea, my cereal, and a Study With Me, and I'd watch Ruby Granger, I'd watch Eve Bennett, I'd watch Jack Edwards, I'd watch so many people, and I'll link a few of them down below, some of my favourite videos that I used to use, and they were just so helpful for getting me in the mood. And not every Study With Me will work for you. You might only like chatty ones, you might only like voiceover ones, but just something that helps you get in the right mindset is something that will just help start your productive day off. The next one is to have an unwind or stressed activity, something that you do when you just felt a bit overwhelmed, and mine's cleaning. I can't tell you how many times I've frantically cleaned the sink, and it's not like a tidying, it's not like sorting the house out, it'd just be one thing. I'd like clean the toilet for 20 minutes, stuff like that, just like focusing my whole attention on something. And it was something that just kind of worked for me. It just helped me take my mind off what I was doing, what I was struggling with, and reset, like I said. Try and keep hydrated, have lots of breaks, try and keep well fed, try and stay healthy. I used to really eat a lot of hummus and cucumber and carrots, just because it was easy, it was quick, I could get it done and then start revision again. I could watch a video whilst I ate my hummus. It did take me 20 minutes to cook. Don't feel pressured to go and do an exercise in your break. Like I said, I used to just watch YouTube videos, I used to watch just sitcoms, watch something easy. Don't like start a TV show that you know is an hour long and be like, oh, I'll stop it halfway through, because you won't, because you'll want to continue it. I've made that mistake, my friend. If you just make sure that you pick something easy that can distract your brain but also won't take your whole day away. After school classes. So I used to go to a few different after school classes. Like I said, I'd get to school half an hour early every day, so I would just sit in the common room and just look through my notes, look through essay plans, check I had no homework to do, stuff like that. Then we had private study periods during the day, which was like our own study time, and it was timetabled. We'd go sit in a room with computers and stuff, and I would put them in my revision timetable, make sure that I knew what I was going to do in those times. And then I had an after school class on a Tuesday, an after school class on a Thursday, an after school class, oh, sometimes a before school class, yeah, and I'd go to all of them, just because you might find something out that you missed in your notes. Your teacher might explain something to you in just a slightly different way that makes it click. My final point, thank God this is a long video, don't necessarily give up the things you love. During A-levels, during year 12, I was working about 8 hours a week, doing different coaching. So I'm a football coach. I would do, I think, 8.5 hours a week. And then in year 13, I was doing 2.5 hours of coaching a week, which is what I do now. That wasn't because of A-levels, that was just one of them I gave up because of A-levels, but it wasn't necessary. The other one I hated, so I stopped. But just keep doing the things I loved. I loved coaching, and it was just an hour and a half on a Saturday, an hour on a Monday, and it just meant that I could have the time to just, for me, and to do something that I enjoy, and it developed my skills and carry on with something that I enjoy, with a club that I enjoy. And you don't need to give up the things you love just because of A-levels. If you're working a full-time, part-time job, maybe cut down your hours, but you don't need to stop like painting or learning the guitar. If it's like, say you've got an hour lesson a week, you don't need to give that up, because you need to make sure that your brain is still yours, that you're not just a machine spitting out grades. You need to take care of yourself, and that's kind of where I'm going to end this video. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope that you found something helpful out of it. If there's anything you want me to elaborate on or kind of go into more detail about, say revision resources, revision guides, exam timetables, stuff like that, then let me know. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again next week. Bye!